Welcome to Solo Journeys podcast, where every journey begins with a single step. I'm your host, Sasha Alexandra, and today we are exploring how breakups affect us physically. I am excited to have Lucy Brown, a neuroscientist, join us today to explain how separation can impact our bodies and share ways to ease that pain. Welcome, Lucy.
Hello, Alexandra. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
Could you please share your background?
I'm a neuroscientist, really a neuroanatomist. I find the brain and behavior and the brain systems underlying our behavior is totally fascinating. And I found it fascinating early on when I was starting college. I have a PhD. I've spent many years as a researcher at Einstein College of Medicine in the Bronx, New York. At first, I studied things like Parkinson's disease. That involved studies of the dopamine system. Then I met a woman named Helen Fisher. And when I first met her, she was the one who convinced me that no one had really looked at romantic love and heartbreak enough. She was very interested in heartbreak. And she thought that there were three systems that were represented in the brain. There would be three different systems for lust, romance, and attachment. Back when I first met her, it was very hard to study things like that for a neuroscientist, to study what we would call then emotion. People didn't want to study emotion. They wanted to study things like I was studying, just the somatosensory system, things like Parkinson's disease. Art Aaron, another person who Helen recruited to begin to study the brain systems of romantic love and attachment and heartbreak. And he had done a lot of psychological studies on romantic love. And when he said that there is something called the passionate love scale, and you could put a number on the feelings that someone was having, I, as the neuroscientist, said, okay, then I think we can use functional MRI. Maybe we can study the brain systems that Helen's talking about if we can put a number on the behavior, on the feeling that people are having. We really had to start on weekends and nights on our own. We all thought it was very important to try to study these things and try to identify the brain systems underlying this strong feeling that most of us have, pursuing someone else, feeling so attached to somebody, and then feeling so terribly sad when we break up and having to kind of reestablish ourselves.
I'm very curious to learn about breaking up and separation. What happens to our body?
Breaking up with someone is similar to losing someone when they die, but also different. There are more decreases in brain activity when someone dies, although I have to say there aren't that many studies about the mourning that happens after death. There aren't that many studies of this. But we certainly know that when you lose someone to heartbreak, parts of the brain that are active are the same parts of the brain when you feel physical pain. I don't think anyone who's experienced heartbreak will doubt this. The ache feeling, the distress feeling of physical pain is there in the brain. I liken heartbreak and the breaking up to breaking an arm. In the very beginning, the pain is so great that you have to pay attention just to that. You do not pay attention to anything else. It's a big event, and in fact, it's necessary to just pay attention to that in order to heal. And the fact is, it takes time to heal a broken bone, like a broken arm. It needs some good care, too. You need to take some time to take care and understand what's happened. Problem is that when someone is going through that initial period where they just have to pay attention to the pain, it's very hard to tell them and have them hear it, that it's going to take time and that this will change. In a way, that's kind of a good thing because they have to pay attention to this pain and see what's happening and just see what they can do to try to stop the pain.
I also have heard that it could be compared with drug withdrawal.
No doubt about it. This system for romantic love is the same system that experimenters have found is active, say, for cocaine addiction. So it's just like withdrawal from cocaine. The conclusion we came to from our studies of the brain systems of romantic love and heartbreak is that nature gave us this system to be addicted to each other. That's the way we should think about it. Nature set us up to be addicted to each other. So when we experience a withdrawal, whether it's from being rejected or there are any number of circumstances when that happens, when we lose somebody, and even for a short period of time, we go through a period of natural addictive withdrawal and feel the craving for the other person. And something that maybe it's hard to accept, but the more you think about it, thing that evolved with us as humans and has some purpose because it drives us to find ways to be with the other person and maybe to try to settle it or to find somebody else eventually to learn from this experience.
Do you think there is something we can do to support a faster healing, or maybe, let's say, as painless as possible, a way to go through these periods?
There's been a lot of research on addiction, say, to cocaine or alcohol. A similar approach. Throw out all the cards, throw out all those little memorabilia, throw out all the texts, throw out everything you've been saving, change your environment. You said you traveled. Oh, that's a great thing to do. By the way, 100 years ago, or say in the Victorian era, even later, a common thing to do for the parents of a young woman who had been rejected was to send her on a trip. Everything around you that's associated with the other person, wherever you are, that's where you've been living, that's where you saw the other person. And those, just like cues for cocaine addiction, which increase the craving. So what you want to do is get away as much as you can. And this is something that people have understood for a very long time. Remove those cues. Now, not everybody can do that. That's one step. The other thing that is maybe harder for some people to do. So, of course, a lot of people are crying a lot. They look depressed. This is a cry for help, asking for help, just as for drug addiction, is necessary. We need other people. So the same system is going a little crazy because of the attachment and the withdrawal, does better when it gets input from other people and just input from talking to people, just input from companionship from other people. So again, looking at what they do for people who are addicted to alcohol, say, or drugs. I'm sure you know about Alcoholics Anonymous. And what people do is every day they go to meetings with other people. They join a community, and it's other people who help them kick their addiction. Asking for help, surrounding oneself with other people. Again, if you can do it, this is something that is definitely going to help people get over their heartbreak. Doing something different. Some people take up running. They never were runners. Then they start to run. Again, and what this is doing is establishing a new you, I like to say. This is another thing that has to be done. What has happened is that the sense of self really overlaps with what you know about the other person. So your sense of self is just inextricably interwoven with that other person. What people who are in love do is they suppress the areas of the brain that have to do with their own sense of self when they look at the other person. When we're in a good relationship, sometimes we need to help the other person and do something that's not really so good for us. We sacrifice a little bit in relationships. You've done that a lot. And so now that has to change. Finding out things that you like to do, start exploring, doing something entirely different that you didn't do with the other person. Keep exploring. Like maybe you say, okay, I should exercise. I'm going to go run or something. So you start running, but it's too hard on your knees, right? So you can't do that. Well, maybe you can try walking. That'll be better. Or maybe you can try Tai Chi instead. That'll be better. But some sort of finding some physical exercise is always a good thing. No doubt about that. And another thing I'll just mention that can help in the initial stages, amazingly enough, because the brain is processing this experience just like it processes physical pain. Taking something like Tylenol. Is Tylenol something you have there in Europe? It's acetaminophen. Or like aspirin. It's one of these over-the-counter painkillers. It can help a little bit. It's something that people can try, especially in the initial stages. If the pain goes on and it really affects someone's inability to work or do anything, to go to a therapist and try an antidepressant. Our behavior is neurochemistry in our brain, orchestrated here by neurochemicals. Of course, the neuroanatomy too, and all the connections. And so, in order for you to function in the world and begin exploring, sometimes people need a little boost of the chemicals in order to be able to see what's out there. Always something else out there for us. If it's taking so long to recover from the heartbreak, then you need a little kick from an antidepressant to change that neurochemistry. If changing the environment isn't changing your neurochemistry, if throwing out all the reminders isn't changing your neurochemistry, if doing new things is terribly hard and you actually just can't do them and you spend all the time at home in bed, then maybe you need this little kick from a pill that's available for us now.
So it depends on the level of complexity.
Yeah, recognizing individual differences here is very important. And knowing yourself, finding out who you are, knowing about yourself, knowing about how sensitive you are, knowing about what you need to encourage your resilience, right, in the face of emotional trauma.
That was a big focus in my situation as well. I know many people after breakups, they rush into a new relationship. I have a feeling that is not the right way to do. What I figured out, very important that I learn more about myself now before I decide to step into a new relationship. Actually, I even see it as a chance. Now I managed to switch my perspective. I had this kick. So that's why I want to come back to Tai Chi, because dynamic meditations and also some other activities really helped me to put my head above the water. And then once you are there in this condition, then you can build up further. But you really need to work to bring yourself to this point. We didn't have a big drama with my husband when we were separating, and it was really adult and very conscious decision. It was still a very difficult process, and I was thinking how people manage it when a heartbreak is involved or drama like another man or another woman is involved.
Yes, I think it's hard either way, but of course it's definitely easier under the circumstances that you experienced to have much more emotional stability to deal with it. That implies a fair amount of stability and ability to think rationally, right? Because when you're in the throes of a rejection or something like that, it's almost impossible to think rationally. Those are the people who will go into another relationship quickly because they cannot try to reprocess and reframe the whole situation and step back. Certainly meditation is a huge help. I'm also very interested in meditation. Jon Kabat-Zinn, do you know that name? He's one of the people who brought mindfulness meditation to Western medicine. He developed a program called mindfulness-based stress reduction. So he's a very well-known meditation teacher and writer. He wrote the book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. He also wrote a book I love. This is one of my favorite titles for any book. It's called Full Catastrophe Living. He believes in living the full catastrophe, facing it, noticing it. He's now 80 years old, but he has compared his meditation experience to a love affair. I found that very interesting, of course, because I had studied love. So I've tried to compare meditation to a love affair a little bit. But indeed, what you're doing in meditation too, that you're exploring yourself and you're losing yourself. It's the idea is to let go of the self for a while. in meditation. And that's a little bit like being in love. You let go, but you're being in love with yourself. So the idea is to accept yourself. And this is so important for productivity in anything they do in life, including their relationships. I think I'd like to emphasize that the system that we're dealing with attachments that we make, is a survival system. And like Helen Fisher used to say, finding a mating partner is life's greatest prize. It's part of the reproductive strategy, really, this attraction to other people and attachment. And the attachment makes it possible for us to raise children, to pass on our genes. That this is one of our greatest function, really, as humans and for evolution. The fact is also, it's not just to pass on our genes, it also provides some joy for us and this companionship and protection. It's a system that evolved for the survival of the species and for the survival of the individual. And finding somebody else is a totally natural thing and something that nature designed us for. So it's something that we should know about. Then you accept it and go on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm very glad you're doing this. I think it's important what you're doing too. You're helping others to talk about this yourself.
Thank you. That's also important for me. It was a very spontaneous project, came out of my situation, of my separation. Let's see where it brings me.
Yes, very good. And it applies to so many situations for a lot of people who for whatever reason, who have been in a relationship and then maybe, especially as they get older, they have to go solo a little bit more. It can be hard to learn how to do that and to learn to enjoy that. Yes, I think I love the title and this idea of doing things like enjoying traveling alone or all of that. So very good. I'm glad you're doing it all.
Thank you very much, Lucy.